Our story begins with Takeru, a nerdy high school boy who's thrilled to be joining an all-girl school that just started accepting male students. This gives Takeru faith that he can finally get a girlfriend now that he'll be surrounded by beautiful women all the time, like Haruko, his childhood friend with an unreasonably large plot who's obviously in love with him. And like most anime, Takeru's harem will only grow from here, and he'll soon find himself thanking the anime gods for granting him a fate more blessed than being reborn as a vending machine or something stupid like that. But once Takeru arrives at school on his first day, a wave of energy suddenly passes through him, as he now finds himself bearing witness to an intense fight between two female students, who surprisingly seem to be using magical weapons of sorts. And as he watches this fight unfold, Himegami, a blonde-haired girl who is also spectating the fight from a tree branch, accidentally falls onto Takeru, causing the two to unwillingly kiss. Himegami immediately gets back up and threatens to kill Takeru for stealing her first kiss, until she sees a unique mark imprinted on his shoulder, which distracts her long enough for Takeru to make his escape. But as he runs away, Himegami whispers that she's finally found her sworn mortal enemy. Meanwhile, Takeru thanks the anime gods for already giving him such a blessed first day of school. Later that day, however, during the entrance ceremony, Minori, the school's principal, explains that Tenbi Academy is a place where students learn to fight using unique magical weapons, but Takeru has no idea what the heck this crazy lady is talking about. Suddenly, Minori decides on a whim to put on a fight demonstration to welcome the new students and teach them about what makes this school so special. Surprisingly, Himegami volunteers to participate in this demonstration and nominates Takeru to join her on the stage. Takeru, however, is simply confused about what's going on and doesn't understand why he suddenly has to fight a girl on his first day of school. But he accepts this supposedly friendly duel regardless, unaware that Himegami sees him as her mortal enemy. Haruko opposes this fight, however, because she knows that her childhood friend isn't ready, but Takeru reassures her that he'll be fine thanks to his martial arts training. But once the fight begins, Takeru realizes that this isn't the normal fight he expected, as Himegami summons a bolt of lightning and thrusts it towards a shocked Takeru. But just as Haruko prepares to leap in and save him, a completely different girl named Inaho jumps onto the stage and blocks Himegami's attack, to the surprise of everyone present, including Takeru, who still has no idea what the heck is going on. Meanwhile, Minori is stunned to see that the weapon Inaho is wielding is one of the original 8 Maken-Ki, which are weapons that were originally created to be wielded by the gods. But what's even more shocking is when Inaho then collapses into Takeru's arms, before revealing herself to be his fiancé, as she refers to him as Master Takeru and kisses him on the cheek. And although Takeru once again thanks the anime gods for his already blessed school life, Haruko is furious to see Takeru with another girl and unleashes her wrath upon him. And to make matters worse for Haruko, when she visits Takeru's dorm later that night to apologize for overreacting, she's shocked to find out that Inaho has moved in with him, as Inaho believes that it's her job as Master Takeru's fiancé to protect him. And even more surprisingly, Himegami then reveals that she'll also be moving in with Takeru, as she secretly wants to keep a close eye on her mortal enemy. Meanwhile, Haruko is completely frustrated by this sudden turn of events and immediately storms off. But she returns a moment later with bags full of her stuff, as she announces that she'll also be living with them from now on. And when they then realize that there's not enough beds for everyone, Inaho volunteers to let Master Takeru sleep in the same bed, which is unfortunately immediately shut down by the other girls, because let's be honest, there wouldn't be much sleeping going on. And just like that, this nerdy high school boy somehow ends his very first day of school with a harem. But living with girls proves to be more difficult than Takeru anticipated, as he's punched by Haruko after Inaho sneaks into his bed in the middle of the night. And later that same morning, when Takeru accidentally barges in on Himegami getting dressed, she pokes his eyes with her lightning fingers in hopes of blinding him for life. And because of this hectic morning, Takeru and the girls find themselves running late to school, with the nerdy Takeru struggling to keep up with the girls. Thankfully, however, Himegami uses her invisible familiar that only she can see to lift Takeru over the school gates before they close. And upon getting another glimpse at her power, Takeru realizes that Himegami is much more powerful than he first thought. Suddenly, the student council president shows up and reprimands Haruko for being late and setting a bad example as the vice student council president. But her harsh and strict demeanor quickly changes when a gust of wind blows her skirt up, and she becomes completely embarrassed that a boy saw her bakery for the first time. And once Takeru arrives in class later, his classmates whisper amongst themselves about Takeru, as they recognize him as the lucky guy who had 3 beauties fighting over him during the entrance ceremony, and they'd be even more furious if they knew he was also living with those same 3 girls. But it seems that Takeru is not satisfied with having just 3 waifus, because when he learns about today's health checkup, Takeru and Kengo, one of the only other males in the school, both simultaneously get the same idea to pretend to be sick, so they can sneak out of class and spy on the girls as they prepare for the health checkup, which quickly turns into a bonding experience for these 2 idiots that share a singular brain cell. But when Kengo begins spying on Inaho, Takeru suddenly grows a conscience and refuses to let his new best friend creep on one of his waifus. Suddenly, Himegami reveals that she's also been spying on the boys this whole time, and punishes them for being creeps by stepping on their faces, which I hear some men would pay good money for. And later that day, despite having Himegami's foot imprinted on his face, Takeru is still thrilled to have the beautiful nurse Aki in charge of his health checkup. But when Takeru puts his hand in a machine that was built to determine what weapon each student is most compatible with, the machine seemingly malfunctions and fails to assign him any weapon. Gen, the inventor of the machine, can't believe this, as it's the first time his machine has failed to find a suitable weapon for a student. But despite this, Gen promises to create the perfect weapon for Takeru in under a month. Meanwhile, Minori reminds Takeru that each student is supposed to be given a unique weapon known as Maken, and that his school life will become much more dangerous without his own. But thankfully, Inaho vows to protect Master Takeru until he can fend for himself. But I wonder where she was when her master was getting stepped on. And after talking with Minori and Gen, Takeru realizes that Tenbi Academy must be an American school, since apparently every student except him has a weapon. So to cheer him up for failing to receive his own Maken, Haruko and Inaho decide to show Takeru around the school, to help him choose a club to join. And as he watches how students make use of their Maken in their respective clubs, he realizes how essential having a Maken truly is, and that only the photography club would accept him without one. But when Haruko begins imagining the indecent behavior that would occur between Inaho and her master Takeru if they both joined the photography club together, she adamantly refuses to let him join, and instead invites him to join her and Himegami in the security club in order to help keep the school a safe place for everyone. And despite not feeling confident in his ability to help, Takeru agrees to join the club after thinking about it for a while. The next morning upon arriving at school, Takeru witnesses a duel between Azuki, another member of the security club, and Kai, a male student who insists on making Azuki his girlfriend if he wins. But although Azuki is a talented fighter, she's unable to break through Kai's unique Maken. Takeru meanwhile feels uneasy watching a girl get beat down so viciously, and attempts to leap into Azuki's defense, before being stopped by the other girls, as it is against the rules to interfere with a duel between 2 consenting fighters, but Takeru simply cannot bear to stand by and do nothing. Suddenly, a ball of energy begins forming in front of his mouth as he becomes imbued with enough strength to break free, and Takeru blocks Kai's attack just in time to save Azuki. And without any hesitation, Azuki uses this as an opportunity to strike Kai in the mouth, ending the fight swiftly and shutting him up for good. Afterwards, Azuki and the other girls reprimand Takeru for getting involved, especially when he doesn't have a weapon to defend himself with. But in response, Takeru says that although he knows that the girls in Tenbi Academy are strong, he still wants the fights to be fair. These words cause Haruko to suddenly remember a time in their childhood when Takeru protected her, and she realizes that he hasn't changed at all. She then reminds Takeru that ensuring fair fights is exactly the job of the security club, which reaffirms his decision to join. And after the events of that morning, Inaho and Kengo decide to join the security club too. And in order to welcome their 3 new members, the club holds a welcome party at a hot spring, of course, as an excuse for more plot to happen, which I unfortunately can't show on YouTube because it's just too spicy. And unfortunately for the boys, they're forced to endure the same cruel fate as you guys, because while the girls are having lots of plot-filled fun in the hot springs, they're stuck away from the girls, but close enough to overhear them splashing around and giggling. And if you've ever watched anime before, then you already know that this can only end with the boys seeing something they shouldn't have, and being punished for it, by a bear attacking them, obviously. Sometime later, Takeru and Kengo undergo training that is pretty easy for the girls, but the boys struggle to keep up, or maybe they're staying back to enjoy the view. Later that night, however, Takeru's body is completely sore from all the training, so Inaho offers to give him a massage as any good waifu would, and Haruko of course grows jealous of this. But rather than get punished again, Takeru instead finds himself blessed by receiving a massage from both girls. Meanwhile, Himegami creeps on them, and wonders where Takeru got his sudden burst of strength when he was defending Azuki. Determined to get answers, Himegami decides to join in on the massage by stepping on Takeru, before promptly asking him out on a date. Takeru agrees, of course, because despite believing that Himegami has ulterior motives, he simply can't pass up this opportunity to go on a date with a cutie. On the day of the date, Takeru and Himegami meet up in a park despite already living together, while Haruko and Inaho secretly stalk them. But thankfully for them, the date mostly just consists of Himegami buying cute things she likes, while making Takeru carry her bags. Throughout the date, however, Himegami realizes that Takeru smells just like her older brother, which is a pretty sussy thing to notice. Despite this, Himegami actually ends up having a really fun time with Takeru, so much so that she forgot to ask him about his hidden strength, which was the entire reason she had asked him out in the first place. Because of this, she forcefully demands that Takeru show her his chest, to get another glimpse at the mysterious mark. Suddenly, 3 men appear out of nowhere and introduce themselves as members of the Himegami fan club, which I'm also considering joining, to be honest. The fanboys then reveal that they've been stalking Himegami all day and have come to save her from Takeru's unworthiness. Annoyed by this, Himegami just summons her invisible familiars and throws her fanboys in the water, which is good since they're clearly incredibly thirsty. Suddenly, however, another man reveals himself from the shadows and challenges Himegami to a fight, and before she even has a chance to reply, he immediately attacks her, but she easily dodges all of his attacks. And while fighting, Himegami deduces that this man must be from Kamigari, a secret organization that seeks to recruit powerful fighters, often against their will. The man then shifts his focus towards Takeru, and when Himegami leaps in to save him, both of them are knocked into the water. But as they fall, their lips accidentally make contact, and Takeru immediately leaps out of the water like a Chad, with Himegami in his arms. Meanwhile, Haruko and the others instantly notice that there's something wrong with this newly emerged Takeru. And as they continue to clash, the mark appears on Takeru's chest, just as he deals the finishing blow and saves the day. But after the fight, Takeru returns to normal and has absolutely no recollection of what just happened. So Himegami informs him that he saved her life and shows her gratitude with a kiss. This obviously frustrates everyone else, including Kengo, who curses Takeru's blessed harem life. And as punishment for this, that next day at school, Haruko prepares Takeru a bento full of nothing but green peas, which she knows he despises. Sometime later, however, Haruko worries that she might drive Takeru into the arms of another woman if she's too harsh on him. Meanwhile, the student council hears rumors about several students being attacked seemingly at random, and decides to employ the security club to investigate these claims. But since the other members are busy overseeing an arm wrestling competition, Takeru is unfortunately forced to partner up with Uruchi, a girl who vehemently hates Takeru, because she's been obsessed with Haruko ever since she saved her from her bullies, and even joined the security club to be closer to Haruko. As such, she views Takeru as an idiot who's unworthy of being near her precious Haruko. After a few hours of walking around school and gathering information, Takeru leaves Uruchi for a while to get some water. There, he meets a mysterious woman who approaches him, claiming that she has information about the unknown person who's been randomly attacking students. And thanks to her plot and feminine beauty, Takeru immediately believes her. But when he tells her his name, she activates her powers and suddenly traps Takeru in a spiderweb that she created. But just as she's about to attack Takeru, Uruchi suddenly arrives to save him, despite hating him with a passion. And although she manages to hold her own for a while against the woman, when Takeru mentions Uruchi's name, she suddenly also finds herself stuck in the spiderweb, unable to move. And just in case it wasn't clear already, the woman reveals that she's the one behind the random attacks on the students. Meanwhile, Haruko is worried after not hearing back from Takeru or Uruchi all day, and thinks that the two might be in trouble. Thankfully, it doesn't take long for Haruko to find them, and she immediately swoops in to save the day. But since the woman already knows Haruko's name, she tries to use her powers on her to capture her, but Haruko proves to be far too powerful, and effortlessly breaks through the spiderwebs as she reveals to possess one of the legendary 8 original Makens. Meanwhile, the other members of the security club are worried about Takeru, but Himegami reassures them that they have nothing to worry about so long as Haruko is there, since no one in the entire school could be a match against her. At that same time, Haruko immediately strikes the woman with her sheathed sword, and ends the fight in a matter of seconds. But when the woman regains consciousness moments later, she has no memory of what happened to her or why she attacked students. Elsewhere, a mysterious woman is disappointed to learn that the student she was controlling failed, but she's intrigued by Haruko's strength. The next morning while in class, Inaho falls asleep and dreams of when she first met Takeru 8 years ago while undergoing her training, and fell in love with his gentle smile. Later that day, Minori teaches Takeru and Inaho's class to control their element, a source of energy found in all living things that if mastered can allow the user to do incredible feats such as shooting lightning from their fingers, or, as Minori demonstrates, effortlessly knock a grown man through a thick wall. And although Takeru and the others aren't on Minori's level yet, they do show some basic ability in controlling their element. After school later on, Takeru and Inaho decide to go grocery shopping together to buy food for their dorm room, but Inaho is really only interested in buying more snacks. And afterwards, while walking home to the dormitory, they decide to stop and rest for a while since it's raining. Inaho then mentions that it was also raining the day her and Master Takeru first met, but Takeru unfortunately has no recollection of this day. So Inaho then tries to give him some hints of what happened on that day, in hopes of reawakening Takeru's dormant memories about the promise he made to her. But when it's obvious that he still can't remember, a saddened Inaho decides to head home without him. And on her way home, Inaho sees a stray cat and decides to take it. Meanwhile, when Takeru returns home, he's informed by Haruko that Inaho hasn't returned home yet. Worried that something happened to her, Takeru decides to head out and search for Inaho. And a few minutes later, he bumps into Kengo, who informs Takeru that he saw Inaho wandering into the mountains, while punching and berating him for leaving her all on her own. But Takeru responds that he already knows that he's an idiot, and races to the mountains in search of Inaho. And when Takeru finally arrives, a large stone suddenly falls towards the cat. But luckily, Takeru is able to use his element to boost himself and save the cat before it's too late. And when another rock suddenly falls towards them, Inaho is the one to leap in and save them this time. But using her Maken causes her to lose consciousness again. When she reawakens, Inaho finds herself and the cat being carried back to the dormitory by Takeru. And although Takeru is still unable to remember the promise he made to her 8 years ago, which was to marry each other when they grow up, Takeru unwittingly says that he'll always be there to protect Inaho, which satisfies her. A few days later, a mercenary unit of students who go by the codename Venus are summoned to Tenbi Academy. And just as Gen is about to present Takeru with his custom-built Maken, they're interrupted by the sounds of a helicopter as members of Venus begin leaping from it. And upon seeing this, Gen immediately leaves to inform the principal. Once at Minori's office, Akaya, the commander of Venus, informs Minori that the female members of Venus will be exchange students at the school until the summer, and further explains that their real objective is to hunt down the culprit who is trying to revive a legendary 8-headed dragon god. When Takeru and the others arrive moments later, the Venus members introduce themselves one by one. But tensions quickly rise as the Venus members' elitist attitude becomes annoying quickly, with one member in particular, Yang-Ming, saying that she doesn't need to introduce herself to the weak. This comment frustrates Azuki, who challenges her to a duel. But since members of the security club are not allowed to duel, they instead agree to solve their differences with a game of volleyball, while Inaho and Himegami cheer on the security club as cheerleaders. But since both teams are equally determined to win and equally skilled, they keep scoring points on each other back and forth with no one really getting any closer to winning. Suddenly, Yang-Ming activates her powers to turn the match in her favor and nearly hurts Azuki in the process. This of course infuriates Azuki, and she decides to retaliate by using her own powers, which also nearly hurts Yang-Ming. And as you can imagine, this quickly devolves into an all-out volleyball brawl, with everyone using their powers, and nearly destroying the gym in the process, while Minori just sleeps through all the commotion. But when the dust finally settles, Takeru accidentally finds himself right on top of Cilia, one of the Venus members, who mistakenly believes that Takeru was trying to heroically protect her, which of course infuriates Haruko and the others. Meanwhile, since they have no way of knowing who the winner is, both sides agree to just recognize each other's strength. The next day at school, Venus members start attending classes for the first time, and Cilia is ecstatic to find herself in the same class as Takeru, as she's fallen in love after what she believes was a heroic action. And seeing Takeru be hit on by yet another girl obviously annoys the other people in class, including Inaho, who tells Cilia to stay away from her fiancé. But after school, Cilia confesses to the other Venus members that she's fallen madly in love with the manly and heroic Takeru, and they all agree to help her win his heart, although they should probably aim for his date. So later that night, they put a plan in motion to have Cilia go on a date with Takeru, without his usual harem of girls getting in the way. The next day, they lure Inaho away with bags of sweets and an inflated Takeru doll, which she miraculously believes is actually the real Takeru, completely unaware that this was a trap by Venus. Meanwhile, Cilia bumps into Takeru after school and immediately drags him off on a date with her, and they spend the rest of the day visiting stores, eating good food, and overall just having a great time together. But at the end of the date, Cilia takes Takeru to a big house and ties him up to a chair. But rather than murder him, Takeru is surprisingly treated to a solo musical performance, as Cilia reveals that she is actually a famous idol in America. Meanwhile, Haruko and Himegami look around the school for Takeru, as they haven't heard anything from him in a while. Suddenly, they come across Inaho with the inflated Takeru dummy and quickly realize that something isn't right. That's when Yangming reveals herself in an attempt to buy more time for Cilia and Takeru's date, while Inaho just now realizes why Takeru hadn't been replying to her all day. And after tricking Yangming into revealing Takeru's location, Haruko and Inaho head out to save him, terrified that Takeru is in danger, while Himegami stays back to hold off Yangming. But when they finally arrive at the house, Inaho uses her powers to break down the entire house because I guess she's never heard of a door before, and finds Takeru tied to a chair, nearly dead from having to listen to Cilia singing for what felt like hours. And the girls realize that perhaps Takeru wasn't in such great danger after all. Sometime later, Takeru is summoned by the student council president to discuss his lack of progress in learning to control his element, and she unfortunately informs him that if he can't pass the upcoming element mastery exam, he'll have to be removed from the security club. Desperate to pass this exam, Takeru has Kengo help him practice controlling his element all afternoon, but he fails to make any progress no matter how hard he tries. But after several hours of trial and error, Takeru is finally able to properly concentrate, as he thinks about all the girls in his life that he wishes to protect, and finally manages to summon his element and fire it, which surprisingly carves a strange but familiar mark into the tree. Meanwhile, Himegami is revealed to have been watching the entire time, but when she senses a familiar presence, she finds out that a mysterious Venus member named Minerva has also been watching this entire time. And what's even more surprising is that Minerva reveals that she can actually see Himegami's familiars. At that moment, Himegami's familiars immediately rush in and attempt to attack Minerva, but she effortlessly avoids all their attacks. But as Himegami prepares to join the fight, Minerva responds that she has no intention to fight her, because her mission is actually to someday recruit both Himegami and Takeru to Kamigari, as they share a uniquely powerful energy. The next day at school, Takeru successfully passes his element exam, and narrowly avoids being kicked out of the security club. Even Cilia shows up to congratulate him by offering to reward him with another date. And just a few days later, Takeru is summoned to the principal's office to finally receive his official Maken. But he's informed that his Maken won't activate until his opponent's Maken is activated. Meanwhile, two twin members of the Kamigari begin plotting the best way to force Takeru to reveal his true power, when suddenly, Kikyo, their older sister, promises to bring out Takeru's full power. Later that same day, as Haruko is walking to school, she thinks back to a time when Takeru fearlessly put himself in harm's way to save another child from drowning, and how she's always looked up to him for his bravery. But this sweet memory is quickly interrupted when she's suddenly abducted. So when Takeru and Himegami arrive at the security club room moments later, they're surprised that Haruko hasn't arrived at school yet, which causes them to grow a bit suspicious, and the two decide to go out looking for her. While searching for her, however, Takeru comes across a student who tells him that in order to save Haruko, he must go to Mount Amenohara, the source of all element powers, before passing out. Meanwhile, Minori and the others reminisce about the days when they were all just students, and how Takeru's father always helped them out when they were in trouble. And because of this, they believe that he must have sent Takeru to their school for a specific reason. At that same time, Takeru arrives at Mount Amenohara, where he finds Kikyo waiting for him. She reveals that Haruko is currently being imprisoned by Otohime, the granddaughter of the Kamigari leader, whose dollhouse ability allows her to fashion a voodoo doll to manipulate her opponents, which she uses on Haruko. Suddenly, Kikyo attacks Takeru repeatedly, and proves to be too fast for him to dodge any attacks. But while getting completely wrecked, Takeru suddenly remembers the day his mother died, and thinks back to when his mother taught him that true strength comes from protecting those you cherish. And at that moment, Mount Amenohara suddenly lit up, capturing the attention of everyone at school, including Himegami. Takeru then suddenly begins gradually absorbing the elemental powers coming from the mountain, which Kikyo immediately believes to be the evil energy of the prophesied sacred beast. And she may be right, as this new influx of power causes Takeru to completely lose his senses, and he heads straight for Tenbi Academy, while Otohime forces Haruko to watch helplessly. And when Takeru arrives at the school, he immediately begins attacking the security club members by unleashing a barrage of elemental powers on them, as they struggle to keep up with Takeru's ridiculous power. Meanwhile, Otohime laughs maniacally as she watches this unfold, completely in awe of Takeru's true power. Suddenly, members of Venus burst into Otohime's hideout in order to save Haruko and create a dimensional space through which she can escape, in hopes that she can get through to Takeru and stop him before it's too late. Back at the school, Takeru continues to absorb all the elements around him, which causes the others to worry that he might die, as his body might not be able to handle all this excess power. A few moments later, a portal suddenly opens, which Haruko walks out of, while holding her legendary Maken. But while the others are relieved to see her, Takeru just immediately attacks her on the spot, which Haruko surprisingly blocks with relative ease. And when Takeru prepares for another attack, Haruko lunges at him and pierces him through the heart, destroying the vessel where all the elemental energy had been absorbed, and saving Takeru without permanently injuring him. And once Takeru returns to normal, Haruko finds herself unable to stop crying, as she and the others are incredibly relieved that Takeru is unharmed. But their sweet moment is soon ruined, however, when Kikyo returns with a few more of her disciples and recruits Takeru to join the Kamigari because of his exceptional power, which he immediately refuses without skipping a beat. In response to this, however, Kikyo warns Takeru that someday he will join the Kamigari and that they will also one day take control of Tenbi Academy. But the other members of the security club refute these claims, as they promise to never let the school fall into their hands. Knowing that they're outnumbered, Kikyo accepts defeat and leaves, but promises never to forget Takeru's name. Afterwards, life at Tenbi Academy returns to normal, with Takeru continuing to train hard. And Season 1 ends with Takeru surrounded by his harem of overpowered waifus. Thanks for watching this anime recap, and I hope to see you all in my next video.